Welcome, NASPNet members. Everybody get their lunch? Enjoyed? Great. I want to start out by talking about one thing that sometimes is often overlooked in a group like this, and that is to recognize the group. There are 108,755 people who live in Murfreesboro. There are 25 here. That says something about this group of people. I like talking to groups like this because generally these groups are above average intelligence.
Yes.
Thank you. They are motivated. They're interested in learning. They realize that they can learn from people other than themselves. They're looking to learn from people who are better than themselves oftentimes. And they're a special group of people. So for that, I would like to congratulate you. Now, Jim just mentioned that I'm a deception detection expert. So I know how to read body language, how to read deception. Now you may wonder, what in the world would deception training have to do with what I do? Well, let me tell you, understanding deception and being able to read people's body language is one of the most valuable skills and one of the most profitable skills that you can obtain. Now we've got some guys who do special training in sales and executive coaching and that kind of thing here. What my training does goes beyond the traditional training. I go in here, not here, down here. I work in the subconscious area. What your mind sees that your eyes don't. Does that make sense? Whenever you speak, if you watch Dr. D do her presentation a while ago, she did magnificent body language. She had great presentation skills. She kept her hands in front of her. She kept them in the Clinton box. She did most everything right. In case you don't know what the Clinton box is, does anybody know what the Clinton box is? Okay, when Bill Clinton first started speaking, he had a tendency to flail about. He had his arms all over the place and he was a little bit uncontrolled. So his handlers created what they called the Clinton box. And they made Bill Clinton keep his hands within his chest and his waist and his shoulders. So when you watch Bill Clinton speak, unless he has a big point to make, he will keep his hands within the Clinton box. Always. And when you speak, it's always a good idea, unless you're speaking to a crowd of 10,000 where you need the big broad gestures, it's always a good idea to keep your hands within the Clinton box. There's something you can take away with you. One of the objectives that I like to accomplish whenever I speak to people is I like to give you information so that you learn something. I like to give you some demonstrations so that you can see that applied, and then I like to give you something that you can take away so that you can apply it today. Now I charge quite a bit for my time, so I'm giving you a lot of money just in what I'm going to give you. Now there are 101 plus deception indicators that I watch whenever I'm watching a person speak, whether I'm speaking one-on-one or whether I'm watching a presenter on stage. One of the things that I watch for is the different types of gestures that people use. Now there are 3 types of gestures that people use, and I call them body language pie. Now when you think of a pie that you eat, how many of you here like pie? Does anybody like lattice pie? Like an apple lattice pie or a peach lattice pie, that kind of thing. If you notice on your pie, you've got the filling in the middle, that gooey goodness in there, and that's great. But just the filling is not the pie. You've got the crust, which creates the support for that pie. And then you've got the lattice across the top, that golden, brown, shiny, pretty lattice with the little windows to let you see the inside. And you can smell that pie coming through the holes in there. It's a total experience. And what that does is it creates an appetite for the pie. Well, what body language pie does is creates an appetite for what you have to say. There are 3 types of gestures that we primarily use when we speak. They're illustrators. Well, let's start with pie. Let's just do pie in order. How about that? Maybe a little OCD here. Pacifiers is the P. Illustrators is the I. And emblematic gestures is the E. So you have 3 primary gestures that we use. Pacifying gestures are one of those things, and I was talking to Candace a little bit about it. while ago, whenever you start speaking, if you ever, how many people have done presentations in front of groups before? Do you remember the first time that you did a speech? Mm-hmm. And it was like all of a sudden you discovered something. I have hands. What the heck am I supposed to do with these things? I never realized that I had hands before, and now what I do, I clasp them, I put them behind my back. This is one of the most important gestures that you have to avoid in presentation, and that is the pacifying gesture. Pacifying gestures, while sometimes indications of deception, are also huge indicators of lack of confidence in what you're saying. So when I'm sitting here rubbing my hands, telling you about what a wonderful product that I have and how good my service is and all this, I'm basically telling you subconsciously I have no confidence whatsoever in what I'm saying. I'm horrified to be here, and I would really like to sit down now. So, I mean, there are a lot of different messages that can come through there, or I could be lying. But a pacifying gesture, you need much more of a cluster of indicators to go with other than just a pacifier. But in general, when you're presenting to people, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's in a group, pacifying gestures are things that you really want to avoid. Picking fluff, adjusting your cufflinks, playing with your jewelry. These kind of things where you would consider them a self-soothing gesture, you want to avoid those. The illustrators are basically body language punctuation. So as I'm speaking to you, when I can PowerPoint to make a point, I can chop to make a point, I can do different things illustratively to punctuate my speech. When I'm not punctuating, I need to make sure that my hands are under control. One of the other things that you need to really consider is when you're talking to people is how your palms of your hands are displayed. Palms up tells you I have no weapons in my hand. That's where that comes from. I am open-handed, I have no weapons. I am not a threat. Palms down, you can't see. Now there are times for palms up gestures and times for palm down gestures. If anybody has ever instructed a group of people, you know that if you say, all right, quiet, class, quiet down, settle down, that is not going to work. You need that hands down gesture to settle the crowd down. But whenever you're talking to someone, you got to watch how your palms are. A palm down gesture shows deception, it shows control. You don't want to use these gestures in general as an overall part of your speech. Also, and I mentioned this to Jim, he got a kick out of it, and I was talking to Candace about it, and I've talked to others about it. Men who have dominant personalities, myself, driving, dogmatic, demanding, doer-type personalities, we have a tendency to use dominant gestures, hands-down gestures. When you guys are talking to a woman, and you are in personal space with that woman, and I am making a point, this is a very bad idea because this makes women very uncomfortable. Now you may be doing it just because you're used to doing that gesture. You may also be doing it subconsciously, and there's no way for the woman to know. So just don't do that whenever you're talking to a woman. Don't do it. Keep your palms up and away, keep them back. Emblematic gestures are the most significant gestures that we use in deception detection because emblematic gestures are the only gestures that do not have anything to do with stress. A polygraph test measures stress. Okay, so when you're trying to determine whether someone is deceptive, if they're fidgeting and all over the place, they may just be really nervous. But if a person is using an emblematic gesture, it is an emotional leak of true feeling. Now, what is an emblematic gesture? Does anybody know what an emblematic gesture is? Do I need to say anything if I do that?
No.
Don't do that in some European countries or you'll have friends you don't want. That, do I need to give you that? Do I need to tell you what that means? Okay, I don't. Do I need to tell you what this means? No. Those are universal emblematic gestures in our culture that mean things without words. Now, where deception comes in, if I say, how you doing? It's really good to meet you. And I'm shaking my head no while I'm shaking his hand, I am not at all glad to meet him. That's an emblematic, that is an emblematic gesture. They are 99.997% accurate in detecting deception when a person uses them incongruently with their speech. So you have to be very careful. Now, where emblematic gestures come from is your subconscious mind. They are an emotional leak. So when you speak, make sure that your speech is something you believe. A lot of times salespeople, and I've worked with a lot of salespeople who, and you guys that work with sales reps and have trained them, you'll know this as well. If a sales rep is not convinced that what they're selling is the best product on the planet, they cannot sell it, because they are incongruent in their message with their clients, and the prospects will pick that up. They have to be, as Zig used to say, they have to be convicted before they can be convincing. And so if you don't believe what you're saying, those emblematic gestures will come out. And whether or not you're a trained deception detection expert or not, subconsciously in the reptilian and the limbic system of your brain, the emotional parts of your brain, you'll pick that up. You may not know why, but you'll pick it up. So it's very important to keep your emblematic gestures under control and keep your message consistent with what your belief structures are, and don't try to talk about things that you don't believe in. I'm going to give you a little bit of a demonstration. The other part of what I do is I work with people on a communication basis that is basically communicates below conscious level. Understanding human predictability. One thing about a crowd like this is a lot of times, how many people think that they're unpredictable? Spontaneous. Okay. Most of us here, I think, probably. Okay, let me ask you a question. Earlier in my presentation, you all clapped. Why did you clap?
I can't remember the time I did it, but probably I was agreeing with you about something.
Okay, why did you clap? You don't remember?
Welcome.
Do you remember why you clapped?
The reason is because it's just expected.
It's expected.
Everybody else did.
Everybody else did. Would you like to know the real reason why you clapped? Because I clapped, and then Jim clapped, and then Rosemary clapped, and then I had one. Can I see my Confederates? I had 4. There we go. All right. The leader of the room began to clap. A perceived leader of the room began to clap. 3 other people began to clap. Your limbic system or your amygdala was triggered and said, "Oh, the herd's doing something. I got to do what the herd's doing." Oh, that's a good idea. Now, your subconscious mind clapped. And you have no earthly idea why you clap. But if I ask you why you clap, most of the time you'll come up with a reason. Because your conscious mind, your neocortex, responds to what your subconscious mind did and has to justify and rationalize that behavior. So when I speak to someone, a lot of times I will speak in a way, and that's part of what the hypnosis training I did that for, is because I have learned to be able to speak at a level below consciousness, below conscious awareness. I can talk directly to a person's subconscious mind without putting them in a chair and putting them to sleep. I can do that, and that's easy to do. And I teach salespeople to use linguistic patterns in order to bypass critical thought. The herd mentality, those types of things work. And I teach all of those things. And I've got 2 minutes here left. I'll just tell you a little bit about what I do. I consult from a standpoint of deception detection. So if you are like in a legal office and you want your depositions analyzed, juries analyzed, witnesses analyzed on the stand, I can tell you what the deception indicators that the witnesses are giving you. I can tell you how the jury is responding to you. If you're doing interviews for new hires, and especially staffing agencies where they do hundreds and they record them, I can analyze those videos and I can tell you flat out whether or not a person is going to pass a drug test or not, or if they're going to pass a criminal background check, or if they're always late, or if they don't get along well with their peers, whatever the things that you're looking for are, just by analysis. Then I also speak like this, or I will do keynotes or that kind of speaking, and then I train. I am, as of right now, as far as I know, I'm the only person in the United States, other than the creator of the BLAST Deception Detection Program, certified to teach that particular deception program. The BLAST is different than most other programs because it allows the practitioner to not only recognize the deception, deal with the deception, and store the deception. It's not enough to just say the person had 5 deception indicators, because they may not all be the same. The deception indicators where they flicked their feet and they did this and that, all together they may not equal a lie. But they may have done 2 gestures that push them way over a lie, because different indicators, like I said, the emblematic gestures, like if the middle finger is one of the big ones that people do. People flip people off all the time and they don't even realize it. If ever you can watch it, people will get in a meeting and you'll see them sitting here like this. Or they'll say, "That was a great point." These are not accidents, and their nose doesn't itch. Well, it may itch because they're lying, but they are flipping you off. And so there's a lot of those things, and I teach people those things, and I can also certify you as a deception expert. I can certify you in micro-expressions, which are expressions that last less than a quarter of a second, and then I do other training as well. But I'm Greg Springer, and that's my presentation for today.